Hello there, my friend. How are you?
Hello, I'm great. How are you?
I am exceptional and getting better every day. Thanks for asking.
Awesome.
Um, so, I think anytime I have somebody have a chat like this, it's probably apropos to start by asking, what made you want to do this?
The podcast?
Yeah.
Well, I, based on your and Meg's suggestion, read The Untethered Soul. You guys got it for me as a birthday gift with the accompanying journal. And it has um, really affected me deeply. And so I am talking about it to anyone and anything that I can. I can't stop thinking about it. I can't stop rereading it, reading it, writing about it, researching about it, wondering how this is the first time that I'm getting this information after living for 40 years. And so you have this incredible podcast. I've watched it. I love it. I love talking to you about this subject because you are someone who, when you do something, you do it. And so you are now like the person to
Guilty
go
as charged.
because I realized that we met 15 years ago, which is bonkers because it feels like last week.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah.
So, before we get into, because I'm going to respond in grand detail to what you just shared, and thank you for sharing it. That's probably a funny place to like give people some background. How do we know each other?
Hmm.
So your husband and my best man and the person who's I was his best man, we were I was invited to a party at your house via this mutual friend.
Right.
And that was the only time all of us have been in the same room.
Correct.
Since that time,
Correct.
15 years ago, we just have formed this friendship as couples, and
Yeah.
it's so interesting to consider, like, what serendipity, right? Like, and
Right.
now we're sitting here having this conversation, and you know am I on this journey if I don't know you before, right? Like, is how have we affected each other's lives in ways that even caused this to happen at all? And
Right.
all of that is very fascinating to consider.
Because it would have been more than easy to not have
I
stayed
mean,
connected.
oh
Like
my God.
there was kind of no reason that we had. Like it's
Right.
crazy.
I
It's
mean,
not
we
like we
had an
live in the same
incredible,
town.
that was an unbelievable Halloween
It was the
party. I
best
mean,
night ever. It was
yeah,
we
like,
had just moved into our apartment. We had a big Halloween party. Your then fiance, now wife, made your Super Troopers costume. You won whatever prize we had that night and ended up army crawling into another room to get video footage of someone doing something funny. So it was great. And
what a
then I think
night.
you got towed maybe from the
I
party.
did because I intelligently asked my now wife, then fiance, to come collect us because we were in no condition to operate a motor vehicle.
Right.
Which, to be fair, is really saying something because I made some. For anybody who might still be making these choices, please don't, because I made some stupid choices, um, driving under the influence.
Hmm.
Anyway, so I can't tell you what it means to me to have you share your experience and have it resonate so closely with mine, because it I gave out, I think, probably 50 or so copies of the book by now. And I was highlighting a lot of them in the beginning because I was so overwhelmed with it. It was like, I need you to see what I see, please. Like, and to the point where it was like I had two levels of highlighter. I had like yellow and pink. Like, it was like, oh my God, this is the part that's like up, like you said, a gut punch. It's like,
Yeah.
what? How could you have said this one sentence? And I feel like you have given me more wisdom in that sentence than I got in 10 years of living.
Right.
It's just absolutely nuts. Anyway, so it's so heartwarming to know that it's not an individual experience. And obviously it's not, because it sells millions of copies and yada, yada. And
Right.
virtually everyone has said it has been either very interesting, eye-opening, what have you. But your level of reaction matches my own.
Yes.
Have you noticed that folks around you in our, let's say, both age and socioeconomic, whatever, are starting to have this kind of, I think it probably would qualify as a midlife crisis in other
Yeah.
generations, but it's
Yeah.
like, it looks more to me like a spiritual awakening
Yes.
or spiritual rumblings. Maybe not everybody is necessarily tripping into a path at the moment, but it seems like virtually everybody is in some form of unrest.
Yes. And specifically, like, well, and I don't think it's a coincidence that we both happen to be turning 40 this year and are, have questions and feelings um and plus we've had a very strange, surreal past 2 years. So I think that's also like what is going on here in
Fair
general.
enough.
Like there and a lot of questions like not that there has to be something more necessarily, because I couldn't be happier with my husband and my children and my friends, family, everything. But so I don't want to say, oh, there has to be something more, but something is almost missing. And this book has been like helping the puzzle pieces connect. And like I said to you the other night, we went to dinner and I said, this book is the answer to a question I didn't know existed. And that's really how I feel. And that's how I keep saying it because it really is. It's like, oh, I didn't even know that that was what I had, that was what I was looking for. And now I have the answer.
Can you give an example of that? Because that sounds pretty substantial.
Yeah. Like this constant inner voice that I didn't even question if everyone had it, just me, some people, but mine, and I have struggled with anxiety my entire life. And so maybe I thought that's why, but mine is when I tell you like unrelenting. And there's been probably, I would say 5 days out of the week that I walk around my house and go, I'm so sick of myself because all I hear in my head is like,
Mm.
dude, it's just all me, 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 me. And it's so like exhausting, worrying, stressing about things that I don't, well, anyway, I'll get into it later. But so I would say that it's just knowing that the inner voice is normal and that I don't have to listen to it
Mm.
and that it is not me. I am not my thoughts and emotions because a lot of them I don't like. And so the fact that I found out that that's not me and I'm the one who actually observes that was really, really awesome because I didn't
What
want to be that person.
I mean, what a blessed thing to happen to be able to see it, even halfway through life. Like, there's a lot of people I know that have passed that I'm
Right,
quite certain never got there.
right.
And it's not from lack of trying. It's not because they were lazy or inept. It's just like a lot of this is just plain luck. Like,
Yeah,
what cards were you dealt, Like,
right.
I don't know. There's some shit going on around the world right now that, like, people aren't exactly volunteering their way into the situations they're in. It's just like you wake up one day born and it's like, surprise, here comes life.
Right. Yeah.
Um so you mentioned that you've now been able to separate that you aren't your thoughts, and that has been freeing because it a lot of those thoughts are negative and therefore can be terrorizing to yourself.
Mhm.
How has this like manifested in a day-to-day way in terms of like, how are you living your life differently, or are you?
Yeah. So it's definitely a process. It's only been, I don't know, not that long. But now when I have this running, whatever you want to call it, this inner voice constantly saying stuff, I now am able to step back from it and take a deep breath and say, okay, I'm observing that thought right now. I don't need to listen to it. I don't need to have it. Let it go. And that's huge because
What
my
would have
thoughts are
happened before
usually,
instead?
oh, I would just listen to them. I mean, I would just go
What would that
crazy.
cause you to do?
Worry and stress about everything you can imagine.
What's the
Um,
most trivial example you could think of?
well, I have crazy anxiety about being late to things. So if no matter what it is. So let's say I have to be somewhere at 3. If I'm not there at 2:50, I'm in a complete panic
Mm.
mode. If I'm there after 3, I mean, I might as well just like drive myself into, I don't know. It's just not good. Um, and so today, for example, and well, anyway, today, my daughter had gymnastics. So I dropped her off, came home, totally lost track of time. She has to be picked up at 4:30. I see that it's 4:24. This isn't like maybe this isn't the best thing because I'm like, be late for your kids. But anyway, the point is it's 5 minutes away. I was actually there at the perfect right time, right when she walked out. Whereas before, I would have been sitting in the parking lot, really frustrated, annoyed because they're not coming out. I'm fighting all these parents for parking spaces. Why do I have to do this? And now it was like, park, that she comes in. Nothing, there's nothing to worry about. I don't need it. It's like a little minute thing that does not have to affect me the way that it did. Little things don't have to affect me. People's, if someone, I wave to them and they don't wave back. And then my mind is like, they hate you so much. What did you do to them? How could you do that? And now it's like, probably didn't see me,
Right.
which is like what probably a lot of people are able to do. I've never been able to do that. I internalize everything. I make everything about me. And that goes back to why I was saying, like, I'm sick of myself. Like, not everything is about me. Almost everything isn't. People aren't worried about what I'm saying and what I'm doing. They're worried about themselves. And so I can now kind of just sit back and be like, let's observe this cool, amazing life that I get to live. See what happens.
It's so funny to see it all, um, to not just see you having the reaction, but then like seeing the same types of benefits. Because those were the same kinds of things that I saw at first too. Like I used to get really bad road rage at the
Hmm.
littlest things, like because I got stuck at a red light because somebody was going too slow through the yellow, right? I'm not late. I don't even have anywhere to be.
Right.
Why am I so mad? And I mean I was mad.
Yeah.
And you can't you can't assume that you don't take some part of that with you, right?
Right.
And you do that 100 times a day, and like
Yeah.
it's like a static electricity that interrupts your entire energy field.
Yes.
All of this chaos of worry.
Yeah.
It's a really good word for it, right? Either worrying about the past, worrying about the future, worrying about the present.
Creating problems where, like, when he said in the book, like, guess what? There are no problems. You make your problems.
And even the things that, even if you could say there are problems, right?
Well,
So
sure.
so
Yeah.
let's use something a little more classical because it's a, and I do want to talk about that, by the way. But assume that, okay, human problems are real problems to be
Right.
addressed. I have found that 80% of the things that I would have intervened on, whether it's like uh, correcting somebody on something, correcting myself on something, like just interrupting something that needn't be interrupted in any way. I can feel I'm going to call it an impulse, not an instinct, because I think those are two discrete things that are very different. I would get the impulse to say something or do something.
Yeah.
Almost all the time, it was an ego-driven thing, right? Like I want to look smart, or I want to prevent looking stupid, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
And if I just ride the wave, it self-resolves with nothing 80% of the
Right.
time. And
Yeah.
so I not only save the effort, but I save the embarrassment, which then creates another shame spiral,
Right.
right? It's like,
Yeah.
it's really difficult to explain to people until you get out of this trap. It's like a machine gun of trauma
Yeah.
all day, every day,
Yeah.
because
Vicious cycle.
you're just flailing yourself all the time. And then by doing that, you show up imperfectly to those around you. And then you see that you've hurt others. And then it's like, and it just
Hmm.
zooms back in the cycle, right? And it's so hard to get out of the loop. So
Right. And
bless you
now
for,
I'm beginning to be on the part of the path where I'm actually looking forward to something triggering me because that means that then I can feel it for the first time maybe ever. So if something bothers me, right? And like before I would have just I don't know, pushed it down or just, I don't want to even go there. I don't want to, it's like a thorn. Like, I don't want to
Hmm.
blah, blah, blah. Now it's like, okay, let's get to the bottom of this. Why is this affecting me so much? Why am I going around and around about this? Is there anything I can do to fix this? Like, is it really worth it? And to just, let it go. It's exciting because I want all these things to come up so I can not have to deal with them anymore and not have to hold them in.
Have you had any somatic experiences?
Um, Not really that I can think of right now. I mean, well, maybe little ones.
Any
Uh,
good cries?
yeah, some good cries for
It,
sure.
would
Writing in
that have
that.
been normal for you?
I mean, I'm a crier,
Okay.
but but yeah, no, I'm a crier. So I'm happy
I've
if it's
generally
not.
been a crier too, meaning like I haven't been terrified of crying. Probably because my dad, despite being a 6'3", 270 lumberjack who was hyper masculine, explosive aggression, cried in front of us. So I guess maybe that like felt like it was a pass on that
Mhm.
one thing. Because I don't know what it was like for you. Be interested to start talking about this with more people. I found the '90s and probably the '80s too to be ridiculously toxically masculine, like beyond possibly even what was like showboated in like the '50s and '60s. Like
Yeah,
it, it, it was so overbearing in like every circle, whether it was, friends, family, like what it was on TV, it was everywhere.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
did
Our
you
kids
feel
are
it?
watching. Yes, and our kids are watching the original Full House now, and it's
Uncle
crazy.
Jesse.
Oh, it's nuts. Like Irv and I will be like in the other room, and we're like, What did they just say? Like he's just assaulting her on the couch right now, or whatever.
Oh
It's
my
just
gosh, I haven't
just
seen it.
crazy
That's
stuff. No, just like, she's like, no, no, and he's like, come on, on Full House, like
yeah,
stuff like that.
that's not. I wouldn't call that toddler friendly content.
Yeah. But yes, totally. The '90s was a different time for sure. It was not okay. It was not as accepted and welcome as it is now for men to really show their emotions and feelings. Like that must have been really hard, for a lot of
Well, I'll tell you,
people.
it was terrifying. I probably sat on this project for a year
Yeah,
before
right,
I got the courage to do it because I think there was a part of me that knew if I was going to do it, I'm not going to just do it in like secret. I'm going to
right,
do it. And,
right.
by the nature of my job, I have thousands of professional connections. And so, there's not no risk to it.
Yeah.
But much like, any situation where you feel like you're doing something in service, I think the irony of this is that had I done it at any other point in my life, it would have been in service to my ego. It would have been in service to likes and attention and whatever.
Right.
And now it's like the number of texts and messages and whatever that I get from people sharing some part of their life that has improved because of some
Mhm.
component of this.
Mhm.
And it's like even just one of them would have kept me going for a year. So
Mhm.
already I have infinite motivation to do it until
Right.
somebody asks me to stop, basically.
Right. Yeah.
um, what do you see around you in terms of what do you think's impeding the collective consciousness from everybody sort of simultaneously waking up to the same conclusion?
Um, I would say a lot of people are afraid of change,
Hmm.
for one, and a lot of people are very judgmental about things they don't know about.
I'd say the internet would support that theory.
Right. The internet is a big reason why some people wouldn't. But I really think it should be like if you are a human being, you should read this book the second that you are capable of reading. I mean, it's about being human and what that means and what it means the fact that we're just like spinning around this one star in a one of the how many galaxies, and that we don't have to spend our entire lives in this prison that we all have made for ourselves that we are continuing to live in without knowing. It's like all these layers. And when you find out that you can be free, I don't know how you can't want to. And I've been wondering for a while now what what manifesting, how that would kind of play into all of this, because it's everywhere now. It's all over everywhere. Manifest what you want. Put out what you want and you will get it. And there's all these like podcasts about it and specific books about like, I want this house, so I got this house. And I was listening to the lecture Michael Singer gave, and he said, manifesting is one of the things that gurus and yogis and all the highest enlightened people are told not to do with this gift of the
You
mind.
can, but don't.
Right, because what you will try to manifest is stuff that
What do you know?
right, it'll keep you comfortable.
Right.
I want that house. Maybe you're not supposed to have that house, or maybe you just need to go, let everything go and go with the flow, and not say, I want that, I want that, I want that. That's, what do you know? You don't know.
And the things that show up instead when you don't pick are so much more beautiful, because you couldn't have designed them if you wanted to. It's like, can you imagine if a human tried to design a flower, or any kind of part of nature that is so infinitely complex and beautiful? We have no idea still how any of it works. We have like these rough approximations. Every part of the human existence is so hubristic.
Right.
And as myself as like a, titan propagator of that, I was just about the most egotistical being you could find. Which of course is, as anybody who's spent enough time in orbit with somebody like that, it's of course always covering up pain, deep, deep pain.
Right. And some people don't even think that they or know really that they have pain, because, the word trauma, like when I first was hearing about that and how that affects people, I was like, I don't have any trauma. I have no trauma. I had an incredible childhood. I love my family, blah, blah, blah. Of course I have trauma. Everybody has trauma. And it's realizing that is, the first step. And then trying to. I'm
trying to remember the quote. Oh, go ahead.
I feel like it's just one big cleansing. That's what it feels like a cleansing.
Spiritual cleansing.
Yeah. Really, really needed.
I can't remember the exact quote, or certainly not who gave it, but it's something like, trauma isn't what happens to you. It's what like you do about what happens to you, or the reaction to it. Right. So you could take 1,000 people and all of them, a parent could pass away. Right. And you're not going to have 1,000 identical outcomes. Right. And so it's the beauty of life, I think, at least this is what it looks like to me now, is that the mosaic that everybody gets is so unique that that's the whole point. Like, if you walked through a flower garden and it looked like an industrial crop farm, right? Like when you drive down the corner wheat fields out in, Ohio, or whatever. How long would it be before that was insufferably boring? 2 steps, right? It's like, the reason why nature is so beautiful is because of the infinite complexity and uniqueness.
Right.
And so instead of trying to fit yourself into the shape of what you think, quote unquote, should be, it's almost like, it's a bizarre likeness to draw, but you ever watch Price is Right?
Yeah.
Remember Plinko?
No.
So there was a game, you went up to the top and you put like a little disc and it went down and it would.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, if you just let life be that.
Right.
Surprisingly, like just let yourself get bounced around with whatever happens and just go with the groove, man.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful and it's fun and it's rewarding. And I'm telling you, it feels protective almost in a way that like you feel, ironically, you care about less, and as such somehow it feels like the world is less threatening.
Right. Right.
And not just, by the way, and I really mean this, I don't just mean it's less threatening because you're less focused on the things that are threatening. I
Right.
actually think that because you're going with the flow, you have
Yeah.
access to intuition, which is not impulse, and
Right.
intuition protects you because
Right.
the universe wants its highest beings to survive. And
Right.
so it will conspire in ways, it will try and get you to pay the hell attention to save yourself. You might be so asleep that you can't wake up and see it.
Hmm.
That surely we see happen all around us all the time, right?
And just using our energies, like it's pretty wild that we have these energies that can be, used in such a way where someone can change the entire um, sort of atmosphere of a room
Hmm.
by just feeling, you know what I mean? Like you'll be around people and all of a sudden someone walks in and it all shifts,
You
and
just
it's
feel warm and
yeah.
fuzzy, like a hug from your mom, right?
Mhm.
And some literally just laying eyes on somebody who's that peaceful and that
Yeah.
still.
Yeah. Or the opposite. And someone comes in and you're like, that's a
Yeah.
whole, you know, it's fascinating. So when I think of now, that we're all just these beings made of energy and we can use those energies to be free, to get out of this trap that we have found ourselves in.
So before this, where would you have rated yourself on a 0 to 10 scale of spirituality, or yeah, let's just say spirituality, where 0 is complete atheist and that you become fully unwilling to accept that there's any possibility of anything spiritual at all, and 10 is like Hasidic, you live at the Wailing Wall.
Um, Three.
Okay.
And so I'm Jewish and I grew up, my mom worked at the Jewish Community Center. So I basically lived there from when I was 5. I would go there after school. I worked at the front desk, the gym desk, the camp there, my whole until I was like 20. I went to Jewish camps. I went to temple, all that. I went to one of those Hasidic camps one year where they studied the Torah every day, and just never really connected with it that much. Unfortunately, I tried. I just didn't. I even worked at a Jewish private school. My first job teaching.
Did you go to Birthright?
No, I tried. Irv and I tried to go together our last year that we were able when we were 26, and we didn't get to go.
Womp womp.
That would have been cool. I know. So I really did try, and I love being Jewish, and I love being around Jewish people, and I love the community and all that. But I just never felt strongly about anything spiritually about that. And I would have said I wasn't a spiritual person at all, really. But like I said, I just had this feeling that there was something beyond me going on in me. Like it, and now I get it. Like you know, I'm the consciousness that's observing these crazy thoughts all the time. So I just feel like it's a really special feeling to have answers now, to like understand more, because I really lived in a lot of fear
Mm.
about a lot of things. A lot of things.
The word
Death.
special. Oh, um, sorry. The word special actually came up today in a float.
Mhm.
Um, like, for anybody who hasn't caught this in an earlier discussion, I do sensory deprivation floats at Truth Organic Spa, um, twice a week, and incredibly beneficial. For one, just the salt, itself. You're in 1,000 pounds of salt in a bathtub, basically. and that's just great for your body biologically. And then the fact that you're weightless and there's no, if you choose to have no light and you choose to have no sound, you can do all that. It's just unbelievably relaxing. And I don't remember what it was, but there was something that came to me on my way out, and it involved the word special. And it struck me when you were talking, you were answering just before that she used that word. And it was apropos the way you used it, because it actually was the way that I was thinking about, like, the definition. We were taught in school in the 90s that you were or maybe the 80s, that you were special because you were you. And that, like, but the way in which that was deployed, I think, actually might have made the problem worse, because to say
Really.
that everything is special
Right.
means that nothing is special.
Right.
Right. And so to me, special is rare, and it points towards truth with a capital T. It points towards the divine, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And so it's like, I feel like we have a special relationship.
Yeah.
It's like, this is not how every relationship in my life is.
Right.
I feel like, you know, the gift of the serendipity of our meeting, that's special,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So I'm looking to reclaim that word.
Yeah. I agree. It shouldn't be taken lightly.
Because there are so many special things around us, but we've almost polluted our language to the point where, I don't, I actually, as I'm saying that, I don't know if we are all speaking the same language anymore, right? Because that matters. The
Yeah.
the the difference of that word use, you
Hmm.
know, if you rewind the clock, I don't know how many hundreds or thousands of years you'd need to do it. You know, if you were to use vocabulary in your local whatever tribe, town, village, even city, like, the specifics of the words are going to matter a lot. One of
Hmm.
the things that happened in the great consolidation that, the conquest of religion brought us in the, first millennia AD, was consolidation of language. And one of the problems with that, and I think they covered this pretty deeply in Sapiens, is you lose a lot of the nuance of, like, how to talk about things in ways that that local culture could relate to.
Hmm.
So if you think about Greek and Roman and whatever old mythologies, they weren't it wasn't happenstance that they got constructed the way they did. It was specifically for the history of those people, with the biology of those people, with the, you know, environmental conditions of those people, right? Like, all of it was bespoke to the situation at hand.
Hmm.
And then we're like, you know what? We've got a better idea.
Right.
You're going to take this Christianity. And then we went around and we killed everybody who disagreed with it, and exterminated the ability to commune with the divine. And then we burned all the witches. Remember that fun little trip? It's like, how many stupid things do we have to do?
Right.
And the
Right.
craziest thing is that until, like, the last couple of years, if you had tried to tell me that, even with a decent level of explanation, that those things were responsible for what shows up as toxic masculinity today, I would have just laughed. And
Hmm.
it's like, but wait,
Hmm.
we put only men in charge of the church and said they're better than everybody and everything. They're the only ones that commune with God. And then we kill everybody who has remotely a connection with spirituality or nature.
Right.
And it's like,
Unbelievable.
what are you going to get? You're going to get a bunch of, like, clinical steel rods
Yeah.
that, can't emote. And
Yeah.
it's like breeding dogs. It's like,
Yeah.
you,
A
you
lot
do
of
that.
depressed humans.
A lot of depressed humans. And I don't know if I talked about it with Rose or anybody. I can never remember what I've talked about in the past. Everybody forgive me, please. Um, but there's just an incredible documentary, Exterminate All the Brutes, on HBO, that covers basically what happened once Europeans made their way over to North America. And it goes back a little ways as well. It goes back as far as the Crusades. Um, but it's just an unbelievably moving account where I had just never really considered. It's just, now that I see this Ukraine thing unfolding, First of all, I'm so heartbroken. I know dozens of people over there, and I've been canceling meetings at work because I'm crying in the middle of the day. So that's a lot.
Yeah.
We can circle back on that at some point if we want to. Um, what the hell was I going to say? I can't remember what I got into this for.
You were saying, um, no, I forget. I was on the train, and then you said Ukraine, and now I can't get back
Yeah.
on.
So anyway, when we're talking about, let's talk about Ukraine. We're there. We're talking
Yeah.
about. Why
Perfect.
was I talking about that though? Anyway, because it's been making me think a lot differently about our own country and our own
Well,
behavior and our own history. And it's like, oh, 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 right. Like, how many Ukraines were there where the United States was Russia?
right,
Obviously, we know Vietnam, right? Like, we know some of the
right.
big ones, but like,
So many.
so many, so many. And I'm hopeful that this will change that because I think the world is no longer going to suffer that.
I mean, it
Um,
seems like it's a 5-year plan to completely tear down the world so that it can hopefully rebuild, because it's kind of like every possible thing that could happen to humanity seems to be happening lately, one after the next.
well, I think it's a bit of a chain reaction thing. I think the world operates with so little slack in the line that when
Yeah.
one thing topples, right, like the housing crisis, right,
Yeah.
then you've
Right.
you've got to swing the pendulum so hard in
Yeah.
another direction to keep the whole system from falling down. That then the wake of that swing, right, creates this whole new set of reactions
Yeah.
that then have to be managed again, and you end up just like riding the clock as it just swings back and forth, crushing unfortunate souls in its wake. By the way,
Right. Right.
right? Um, anyway, so the reason I brought up Ukraine is that seeing real time propaganda construction and debunking is freaking fascinating,
Hmm.
really fascinating. And what is even more fascinating to me is that I think between the internet and now blockchain, I don't think anybody is going to be able to hide from the truth anymore.
Hmm.
It's like, are we
Yeah.
going to know every single thing that happened in this war? No, we won't. But
Right.
we might know 90%.
Right.
Whereas 50 years ago, we might know 10%.
Yeah.
100 years ago, we know 1%. Right.
True.
And it's just like, what that means, I've seen videos, for instance, of, entire convoy lines being stopped by civilians just standing in front of them. And it's because there's 100 phones out,
Hmm.
right? And so
Right.
what are you going
Right.
to do? You're there on a special exercise and you're running over civilians with tanks, right?
Right.
So you rewind that even 10 years
Yeah.
and those people are run over.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I feel like there's this bizarre, and it's not, it is asymmetrical, it's non-linear, and a lot of people get hurt in the process, but I feel like we are spiraling actually closer to a world of truth.
Yeah.
And I think first,
It has to get bad.
yeah, like it's almost as if we went from this world of a very rigid constructed reality where you get fed something first by kings or first by the clergy, then by kings, then by a government, right? And now it's like freedom of information. And that's a really, really, really big deal.
Right.
However, and I'm thinking of all this in real time, by the way, I've never thought of this before. That information, that freedom comes with a very real responsibility.
Right.
And imagine if you're given godlike powers, which is really what I think consciousness is.
Yeah.
But we're all fucking children of God, right? Like we are literally children. And so we don't know what to do for possibly our whole lives. Surely the first 15, 16 years is impossible to have a clue. It's just developmentally impossible because
Hmm.
of the infrastructure we've got. Actually, have we ever talked about my theory on original sin?
No, I don't think so.
So imagine if at some point following conception, you bridge in a consciousness from wherever the source is, right?
Mhm.
Wherever
Yeah,
this comes from.
yeah.
And you get stitched in through this, like, it's a singularity, infinitely small, somewhere for the purposes of assuming your body is real, right? And has a grid somewhere in your head it
Mhm.
projects out of. But you take if you are a god, if you are God, if you are the universe, I think the universe and God could be synonymous. Not that it's a,
Yeah.
person robed figure with magic. It's like
Divine.
it's the everything. It's the whole thing.
Mhm.
And if you are that, then that means you're omniscient, you're omnipotent, you're omnipresent. And so the only thing you lack is limits. And so if you lack limits, then you have no way to experience anything. All
Mhm.
experience requires contrast, right? You need light for dark, right? Everything, if you can't sense heat if you don't have the differential of hot and cold. If
Right,
everything is
right,
constant, it doesn't exist.
right.
So if you are everything, know everything, then what? It'd be a pretty boring. So
Yeah.
there are hypotheses that suggest that we are just God experiencing itself, and that it's almost a game. It's like, let's run this simulation. We're going to run it through this operating system, the
Right.
operating system where triangles are the strongest shape and gravity works this way and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And then you layer on top of that, okay, and we're going to do it with these constraints. It's going to
Yeah.
be this visible light and this range of, sound perception and this tactile, whatever. And you throw that all in a bag and you stitch it into a human, a being. Now, you are inserted in infinite consciousness. Behind the singularity is infinite ability to know all, do all, squeezed through a singularity and then extruded through those constraints of sense.
Mhm.
And you show up, and what do you got? You have a constant stream of oxytocin. It's warm, it's white noise, right? You got everything's just good. You're swimming around, just like, hell yeah, what is this place? Like, this is kind of cool.
Right.
Although you're not thinking that because you can't really think yet. It's
Right.
just everything just is. Everything is
Yeah.
love and beauty because
Yeah.
there's nothing else to even compare it against. It's just
No. Yeah.
everything is perfect.
Yeah.
And no matter how you come out, assuming you make it out, it's a trauma, right?
Right.
There's
Oh yeah.
no birth where it's just like everything was swimming, because it can't be. You just
Right.
went from the perfect possible human like situation for
Environment.
eternity into something that's not that.
Yeah.
And you have no possible way to deal with it. It's impossible because there's no Rosetta Stone. There's no like
Right.
guidebook. There's no
Right.
user manual for your brain and your consciousness to interact. Your brain is like a raw database, and it's got the operating system on top of it, right? Your DNA, and then the underpinnings of the operating system of the universe. But there's no information. It's just a completely blank database. And then from the moment you come out, every single thing that happens is data that comes in that
Mhm.
informs, oh, this is how the world works.
Mhm. And this is who I am.
This is who I am. So this is the problem, right? Is that because from that moment forward, your mind steps in. Your consciousness doesn't know how to operate the little mech warrior that you are yet, right? Your biological suit. It doesn't know. It just showed up.
Right.
Your mind, which is connected to your DNA and the whole biological system, is like, I got this. And so you fall behind the mind,
Yeah.
and the mind runs the show,
Right.
usually until you die.
Yeah. Trying to protect you, but in turn.
That's exactly right. Because what it does as it starts to store data is, because you're a child, and when something comes in and it vibrates your heart
Yeah.
in a way that feels scary,
Yeah.
and you are a child, it is impossible for you to know what to do with it. You just haven't had enough data yet. It's not possible. Developmentally, not going to happen.
Right.
So you have this vibration, and your body has the built-in mechanism to go and then just stitch it into your body
We're
somewhere
gonna
where you'll
store
carry
that
it for
away.
the rest
Yeah.
of your fucking life.
And you'll feel that vibration every time something tries to
Activate it.
activate it.
Yeah. It
And imagine
was
how many stored little, incidents.
thousands. I have thousands. I've cried hours and hours. Like the other night, Meg and I got in a fight. We don't get in fights very often at all, actually, at this point. But I think what's been happening is I've been so aggressively releasing stuff, but not discharging. It's like static electricity, actually. Like you can
Mhm,
break this stuff open, but if you don't get it actually out of your
mhm,
system, I'll call
mhm.
it, it's literally almost like static electricity, and it starts to create a different kind of anxiety and stress. Um, it's so funny how there's layers to the game, you know,
Right, right.
where it's like you get past one little stage and it's just like, oh,
Yeah,
here's another couple to just fuck with you
yeah,
forever.
right.
So
It's
anyway, the reason I'm saying it is I've started to there's all kinds of things that I've started noticing about these releases, but the first thing I'm noticing is how inexhaustible the supply seems to be,
yeah,
you
right,
know.
right.
But I will
It's
say
almost
that
everything.
the encouraging part is that as it goes, everything feels lighter,
Yes,
and physically I feel lighter. Like I see a
yeah,
very direct connection to I'm getting rid of the stuff out of me, and I literally just have better mobility. Like I
yeah,
can, like my chest is open. I wasn't able to play golf. I tried playing golf for a while. Um, and my chest was so tight. I literally couldn't swing in a straight line because I couldn't even put my arms in front of my chest together. It
right,
was so bad because I was storing so much garbage.
right. And that, like, I've been breathing ton more, a ton more. These huge deep breaths, and then I let them out, and I swear it's like a pound with every of just stuff
Mm,
that seems to be going away with every deep breath. And what was crazy was this morning I had a really hard, awesome workout, like I do every morning. But this morning in particular, I was like, it was super heavyweight, and I was like, I am flying. Like, this is weird.
nice.
And then at the end, didn't even fall to the ground, like, really tough workout. And at the end, I realized, like, I was breathing the whole time. And I think before, when I would do these workouts, I'd be like, and just,
Hmm.
it's crazy.
I think that the samskaras get stored all around your lungs. I think they get stored the closest to your spine and then along your skeletal system. And I mean, you can find them very easily. You know, anything that's a pressure point is basically a dump zone. It's a dump
Yeah.
site.
Right.
There's nothing on your body that you should be able to press and feel pain unless it's damaged, right? And people think that their bodies are damaged. They are not. I'm telling you, I'm fixing scoliosis through this process. Like what I thought was like a genetic thing, and it's not. It's because I found all kinds of knots like deep inside my hip sockets, inside my quads, like that contorted my hip, that then contorted my spine, that then
Yeah,
contorted my
totally.
shoulders. And
Yeah.
it's like, and it feels like it's been that way probably since I was, you know, who knows how young.
Right.
Anyway,
Right.
so as the body accumulates these things, it I think mobility gets limited
Mhm.
because it's your body's way of not cracking open the jar.
For sure. I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
And I think it has the intuition to store it in places where it has calculated, because the mind is such a good computer. It's so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
It calculates, okay, over the last 5 years, where are the places in your body that have moved the lowest percentage of the time? It's like, oh, right there at the base of your neck. Great. We're gonna start putting it there. And then what happens is more and more goes there, and therefore your body is more and more protective of that area. And it's just like, oh man, I really stiff neck. And then you go to do it. And it's just like, whoa, that's shocking. Right. And it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, because it's shocking because your body put in like a tripwire basically. Right.
Right.
So
Right.
if you go to move your body in a way that feels almost electric, it's because your body set up protective mechanisms to say, don't touch here. There's like a nuclear waste site.
Right. Right. Yeah. Completely.
But I love the breathing thing. I've found my breath capacity is probably 5 times what it used to be.
Wow.
I used to not be able, like if I ran up the stairs and I would like, lay next to the kids or something, I couldn't do it without like separating myself from them because like the constriction on my chest, like I felt panicked.
Mhm.
And what I now see is that it was the beating of my heart and the expansion of my lungs. Those 2 things happening at the
Yeah.
same time was too close. It was like vibrating because Kissy, I can't tell you how much I had in me, how like
Yeah.
unconscionable amounts. And to that point where like it would restrict me. And really fantastic example, CrossFit, MMA, right? Extreme sports. That kind of stuff would happen to me, right? Like I'd get hit and I'm getting punched, but I'm not having a physiological reaction to getting punched. I'm having a physiologic reaction to getting punched by my father without like not seeing it. Right.
Mhm.
And like, so I'm having a trillion different reactions,
Right.
all compounding on each other, all making it
Right. 'Cause
worse,
you're not
releasing
dealing
more
with any.
stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then I decide to get in a cage fight.
That was,
These are
yeah.
these are the things that, these are choices. It's so funny. Spiritual Sunday fires we do at the house. That gentleman, Anthony Soto, came this past
Oh,
Sunday.
really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was
Wow.
it was very special.
Oh my, yeah.
And
That's
I
special.
really mean that. It really
Yeah.
was. He's an absolutely beautiful soul. I'm gonna actually ask him to do this.
Oh,
And I bet he'd
should.
be willing to.
Yeah. 100%. That's amazing.
What do you think are some practical ways that people who maybe haven't haven't had any spiritual experience at all? Like if somebody's listening to this and they're listening to it because they can't believe that a meathead like Matt Haney would possibly be producing content like this. So what's going on with this dude?
Right.
And I'm trying to think of ways that, people can start to explore things that are
Yeah.
maybe,
Yeah.
incremental.
Well, it's funny. I haven't really been talking about this journey I'm on much, except to you and Meg and obviously Irv. And I just talked about it with my neighbor today. I don't know. It feels a little sacred. And
Hmm.
also, like, I guess I'm probably realizing I still have that fear of being judged. Um,
Well, this will help you get over that.
yes, exactly. But so I've been sort of opening up about it a little more lately. And this morning I was talking to my parents on the phone. My parents were born in 1949 and 1950. They got married when they were 20. They're 71 and 72, still madly in love. They're
It's
amazing.
amazing.
But they are not spiritual people like I've been learning about. And so I just told them, I said, I'm going on Matt's podcast tonight. And they're like, oh, about what? And I started telling them about the book. And they were like, tell us more, tell us more, tell us more, because it sounds pretty amazing. And my mom is a worrywart and always has been about everything. And so my dad drives a ton for work. And so all day, every day, she's usually worried about him and the ice and the snow and what have you, just constantly running like, is he okay? Is he okay? Is he okay? And so when I was telling her about the thoughts and how you are not your thoughts, she was kind of like, oh my God, that would be amazing because, I'm so stressed and worried so much. And I would love to not have that. And then later that day, like we talked for a while, and later she texted and she said, I just had a thought that like I'm worried about dad on the ice, but then I took a breath and thought it's gonna be okay and let it go. And like just even that little thing, like to separate yourself from your thoughts and realize you don't have to pay attention to that thought that like for me, this book made me realize that I was listening to this voice that was 95% wrong, and would constantly tell me that person hates you, that person is, mad at you, that person ever. And I would just, and even when the voice was proven wrong, I'd still be like, I'm still going to listen to
Yeah, right.
you. Why not?
That's one of the favorite parts of the book to me is like, if pretend the voice in your head was a real person. Pretend it's your best friend sitting next to you. And now animate that person with your thoughts. Just do it for like an hour. Would you let that person hang out with you? You'd put them in a nut house. And then if you observed how often they're wrong, to your point, right? Would you
Yeah,
take their advice
right.
ever?
Ever.
No. And
No.
yet here we are letting our, impulsive, and I think it's worth defining what I mean between those two words, instinct and impulse. Instinctive and impulsive. To me, instinct is the answer to the test you receive in the moment, every moment, forever, when you're in flow state. And I think you get into flow state when your ego stops giving a shit about itself and you're just interacting with the universe as is. And I think impulse is the exact opposite. I think impulse is when some scars are pierced, there's a nuclear explosion, and the energy coming out of that explosion is directed into an action
Mhm.
or or even a thought. Thoughts can be damaging if you incorporate yourself into them, right? If you use your consciousness to energize them and animate them.
Mhm.
I don't know if I ever tied off on the original sin thing, by the way. So
I don't think you did. Yeah.
my thought is heaven is never having to make a decision. So I think all of nature is heaven. Even though an animal might get eaten or whatever, like it
Right.
just is. It
Right.
just is, which
Just
is
it.
what goes to that notion of there are no problems. Everything just is. It's
Everything
like
just
over what time horizon is it a problem? You can't have, in the same way you need dark to have light, you can't never have pain.
right.
Suffering is optional, but you can't not have
Right.
pain.
Right. Suffering is optional.
And so when we were gifted this consciousness, as we moved from primate to Homo erectus, eventually to sapiens, the sin is what we were talking about earlier. Like, okay, so you are no longer in heaven where you make no choices. You can now make every choice.
Mhm.
And that's the bite of the apple. It's
Mm.
like, oh, you wanted to know? Okay. All right,
Yeah.
pumpkin. Now you know. Now
Yeah.
make every choice forever. Good luck. How's that fucking anxiety doing?
Right.
Right?
Right. Totally.
And everything from then forward has been us trying to figure out, what do we do? Right? We went from, our whole map was just given to us via DNA. Everything is just if this then that. It's a total known construct to, you can do anything.
Right.
And
But
what do
then,
you
but
do with
we've
that?
right, and but then we say, okay, well, let's look to society because we all want to do what everyone else is doing. So then it's like, okay, well, you go to school, and then after school, you do this, and then you get married, and then so and there's a lot of stuff going on in the world where people, unlike the '90s, are more and more choosing not to just do what everyone else does. And I don't know if maybe that's part of this. Maybe people are opening up more, opening their heart more.
I think so. I'm having a very beautiful experience at work where, and it's not lost on me that because I sell, it's not entirely marketing software, but it's marketing centric software, that my audience is primarily female. So that's
Mhm.
not lost on me. That's probably why a lot of this is landing so smoothly right now. Um, but like, I'm pulling no punches on this stuff, in terms of how I show up at work.
Mhm.
And the support that I'm getting, and I don't mean like rah rah, keep it up kind of stuff. Like,
Yeah.
people legitimately opening their hearts.
Right.
It's wild. I had a conversation with a potential partner, and I mean, it couldn't have been inside of 5 minutes, and we were talking about this kind of stuff.
Wow.
And like, he stopped the conversation at one point. He goes, I can't even believe I'm talking about this.
Right. Right.
And that kind of stuff is happening all the time. I think people are dying for authenticity,
Desperate.
starving for it, because it's our true nature. Our true nature is love.
Right.
And that's why I have hope for things like the Ukraine situation, because at the end of the day, our base nature is love. And yes, we get layered on top of that with the sin of not knowing we're divine, and therefore all the stupid shit you do to harm yourself and consequently everyone around you forever until you wake up out of it. And that's what I think, in the Bible, and I don't know what parts come from which sections because I'm just not that learned on it yet, but this notion that the kingdom is within you, it's so true. Every single bit of the whole game is right inside of that singularity. Every single thing you need to change your entire experience with the universe, if not actually change the entire universe. And we're so, every action we have in society is the inverse of that, right? It's like,
Right.
like this whole woke mob thing,
Yeah.
right? It unto itself to me is demonic or satanic, right? To use the religious terms, because it's not focused on truth. It's
Mm-hmm.
focused on revenge, right? It's not focused on love. It's
Yeah.
not. You're not trying to solve. It's not even about solving anything. It's just about love. Just what is the most loving thing I can do? If somebody is hurting other people, I can't imagine how much pain they must be in. Because if your base state is pure love, how much pain must you be in to hurt other people?
Right.
Especially people who are hurting their family. Oh my God. Like that guy who like murdered his family out in Arizona or wherever the hell it was, Utah.
Put them in the.
Yeah, the oil tanks or whatever. I thought about that for a really long time, and I don't think about things for a long time
Me too. I couldn't stop.
because I was like, how the fuck does that happen? And he was in hell. I think hell is when not only are you making every decision with your mind and not your intuition. So all decisions are made on impulse, no decisions are made on intuition, and you have severed the ability to you have no flow of anything divine. There's no, like, you're completely cut off. And I think that's what hell is. I don't think hell is a place you go. I think hell is a state you exist in with your consciousness where you have everything is lost. Because how else could that happen?
Right.
Everything that could, should matter. Even I just refuse to believe that there's like a psychological flaw where that's like something baked
Right.
into the system, because you just don't
Right.
see that kind of stuff in nature. And you sure as shit don't see it at like the prevalence we do in society.
Right.
The
Right.
incidence rates of things are just nuts. Even just to say something controversial, because that's just the kind of guy I am. This whole notion about like LGBTQ plus 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 plus. The plus 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 part is very interesting to me, because what is the need to further delineate things at like farther and farther, like microscopic levels of definition, right? So let's just take gender expression as an example, right? As I mentioned, I have had a proclivity for, exhibiting feminine characteristics that maybe other people wouldn't. And that has been dynamic over time. There have been things that like I've clammed up to. There's been things that I've opened up to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I say masculine and feminine, I mean like empathy.
Right.
That's a feminine trait. Like judgment, control, power, whatever. That's a masculine trait. The people who seem to be most like in the middle of the wave of this whole thing, the gender expression stuff or gender identity stuff, seem to be at the times of greatest change. Teenagers in your 20s. Like you're like a Lego kit, like constantly getting reassembled into new things as you're like exploring and trying and
Yeah.
whatever. It's like, so I'm male, female, other. And it's like, why do I need to explain what the other is? And what,
Right.
I mean, sure, colloquially, like whatever, but like, why is it necessary to force society down this like extremely cryptic path? And I say cryptic because it's cryptic even to the people who are in it.
Right.
If you speak to people who are involved, who are either transitioning, have transitioned, considering, or you read things written by them, watch interviews, whatever, like none of it's straightforward. All of it's confusing. There's a lot of like fear and in some cases desperation, right? Like this is not some like beautifully linear path that everything gets painted out to be. I don't know why I started talking about that.
I wonder if it has to do with people on the outside thinking that these people want to be seen, eat for who they are, each individual. Um, but
And I think that goes kind of to what, actually, you might be tapping on something pretty significant. Everybody does want to be seen, and everybody wants to feel like they belong. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's
yeah,
so complicated. It's absolutely complicated. But no matter what, I just can't imagine a universe where the answer is doxing people and getting people fired and getting people
right,
canceled and whatever. It's like,
right.
so today you think that you have the moral superior high ground. How many times in your life have you found out you were wrong about something years later? Do you want to have ruined an entire family's life? Right? Like,
Yeah,
we know that a huge percent, I say huge, more than 0% is huge to me, of death row inmates are innocent.
right.
Like a huge percentage, right? Like, I don't know, 5%, like some
Yeah,
preposterously high number. You think you know better than that system, right?
right.
Like, the system is designed to be really thorough and have like experts and whatever. And you're a better judge than, it's just
Yeah,
like again, the hubris of the human mind knows
yeah,
no bounds.
right, right.
But I am inspired by even the reaction to Ukraine, because I don't think 5 years ago we would have seen a united world like this. I think, to your point about the number of things going on, I think people are looking to rally around something.
Yeah,
And it's like we've been divided over COVID, we've been divided over the government, we've been divided over all these things, and it's
um,
like, but you know what? Fuck Putin. I think we can all
right. I
agree.
think we can all,
I
right.
think we can all agree this is just not the right thing to be doing. Now, there's an extremely strong argument to be made that the United States put him in this position by weaponizing Ukraine as a threat to try and, negotiate with, that whole sector. And, these situations start to just like unpack a web so complicated that it's like, how could you start to point blame? It's like the whole system, it's like a self-sustaining. You ever see things that are like all lean together, and like if you took any piece of it away the whole thing would collapse?
Yeah,
It's like that. It's
yeah,
like any single piece of it, if you remove Russia out of like the global economy, the whole thing collapses. Which
right,
is the reason why we haven't just, right, like there's a reason why China didn't just take Russia.
right,
Right? They could look at Russia's military right now,
right,
completely committed, or at least half committed, clearly not very strong, not well equipped, not well trained. China
right,
could roll in and take Russia, literally. And then you got the nuclear weapons, right? And then it's just like, oh, wait, just kidding. Nothing matters. Like
right.
everything's just like, eh.
Yeah, yeah,
Now, that's one of those weird things where it's like, who's to say what's good or bad? Right?
mm,
Well, if you were one of the, 100,000 something people who got evaporated that day, you probably thought that was pretty fucking bad.
right,
But if you're one of the millions of people who didn't die in war for the decades after that, because everybody was afraid to go to war, that was probably pretty good. And it's like that one paradox, I think, explains the entire human condition, the entire yin yang of good and evil.
hmm,
It is a never ending dance that can't be extinguished. And you just deal with whatever shows up in front of you, in
hmm,
front of you. and maybe in front of you is, I need to move to Tanzania and do, but I'm not suggesting that that's not it, but the notion that everybody's responsibility is to solve all the world's problems, as opposed to, meanwhile, they can't hold a relationship, they're estranged from their family.
Right.
It's like,
Right. Yeah.
what makes you think you're so qualified to fix the world? You can't even make your damn bed,
Right. Yeah.
And by the way, that was me. That was me all day long. I was so in love with solving other people's problems, And the meanwhile, I'm broke. My credit's a disaster. My diet's a mess, right? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones.
Right.
It's like all these old sayings that we think are so trite and just meaningless. It's like, no, actually, there's 30,000 years of fucking wisdom in that sentence.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a reason that one stuck around.
Exactly.
And all the other good ones. Yeah.
And that's the thing is, I can't remember who brought it up. Ray Dalio was the guy who wrote Black Swan. Anyway, he's a controversial fellow. The longer something has been, or maybe I got it from Jordan Peterson. Anyway, the longer something has been around, whether it's a saying or a book or a piece of art or whatever, the more likely it is to be around for as long again. Right? So
yeah,
if something has only lasted a decade as something meaningful to culture, you can trust that it probably will be at least meaningful for another decade, but probably not longer than that, right? But like the Torah, the Bible, the Quran, right? These things, we can trust that whatever literal interpretations we're mistaking today, we can trust that there's value in it because we've been carrying them around for over 1,000 years. Like there's stuff in there.
Right.
That's like we need at 5,000, right? How old is the Torah alleged? A long time.
Long time. Yeah.
A long time.
Yeah. Very, very long.
So let's try and pay attention to some of that stuff.
Right.
I look at like the 10 Commandments, and it's like, okay, so did he go up and burning bushes and handed from God, whatever? Probably not. But did he go up and trip balls on DMT or psychedelic mushrooms or something else and sit back and receive the collective wisdom of every human that had lived to that moment, and then distilled it down into like a handful of things that it's like, okay, when we do this, it works out, and when we do this, it doesn't. Bam. Right? It's like, can't that just be a thing? Why? Right. And if it was, why would that be so bad?
Right.
Why does everything have to be so? It's mystical is not even the right word. It's like magical to the point of non-belief.
Right.
It's like, why can't we find the intersection of things that are usably true?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think it's because people are afraid. I think the short answer is that people are afraid, right? Like, what would it mean? And I think the reason why people are afraid is it challenges their maps. If your whole life,
it challenges everything.
If your whole life religion meant this, and suddenly it could mean an entirely new array of things, and none of that might be true. Basically, all your entire life has to get redrawn, right? Because especially if you're a very religious person, like all of your maps of meaning fall apart. And it's like, why do I do anything anymore? And that, I don't know if folks know this, but deception is basically the worst thing, or betrayal rather, right? The seventh plane of hell is betrayal. And the reason why is because somebody who's so close to you has damaged you in a way that you never saw coming, right? Which is why it's betrayal.
Mm-hmm.
And so that forces you to rewrite your whole life map, because it causes you to question yourself. You have to redraw your whole ego, actually, right?
Yeah.
So you have to reconstruct
all your relationships.
Right. It's like, who am I that I didn't see this coming? What does that mean? Did I cause it? Am I an idiot? Right? Like, and it's just like, and so that is why, like, when somebody gets cheated on, or, you find out that somebody spent the college savings on gambling or whatever, it's not just the thing. Because at the end of the day, the thing isn't that big a thing. And I know, trust me, I appreciate the absurdity and how painful that could sound to somebody who's been the recipient of some kind of trauma recently. I'm not trying to be flippant with it.
Mhm.
But once you get past it and you can see it for what it is, it's just the thing that happened.
It's an event.
And
It's
it
an
hurt.
event.
It hurt a lot. Don't get me wrong. But the way we let it destroy our lives is because we let it, right? We allow the meaning to be more than it is.
Right.
And we let that whole spiral happen, and it's just
Yeah,
like
overthinking.
getting thrown around in a dryer.
Like a
getting
ping
beat up.
pong. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, what do you think? Should we wrap on dryers?
Yeah, let's wrap on dryers. That's a good place to stop.
Well, this has been a heck of a conversation, my friend.
Yeah. This has been great. Thank
I
you for having
appreciate
me.
you so much. Do you know that?
Thank you.
I mean that
I-
authentically. You've been a true ray of sunshine in my life since I've known you. And to now, even just the story you shared with me about your parents, like this whole journey, all the effort, all the fear, all the pain that I've had to go through myself, worth it just to hear about that text. And I mean that.
Wow.
So thank you.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. All right. Well, say hi to the fam. I love you guys.
Yeah, you too. We love you.
Talk soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.